Has ranked choice voting made campaigning more negative? We'll get into that, as well as these election results that should start coming in here in New York City. This is Nuance, of course. I'm Mike Scala, an attorney and an MC, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timmy, the hip hop artist in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
New time zone for today. That's why we're a little bit late. Yeah, stateside for the moment.
So
And
we are in the same time zone. We're usually in very different time zones.
right, so new time zone for me
Yes.
this time. And this ranked choice voting. Um, yeah, I mean this is still kind of new in New York in some regards, right?
Right.
So, kind of what do you think? How's this working out there?
Well, one of the features of it, right, when it first came in a few years ago, was supposed to be that it was going to make campaigns more positive. They said it would actually remove some of the toxic environment that you often get in campaigns. And the theory behind that was that you would need to appeal as a candidate, as a campaign, to other candidates' bases, right? Other candidates' voters, because when people go to vote, they're not just going to rank or vote for one person, right? They're ranking up to five candidates. And so to expand on your base, you want the other candidates, voters, to vote for you second, third, fourth, etc. In case they get eliminated, their votes will come over to you, right? So the idea is instead of trashing all your opponents, maybe you'll be kinder to them because you want their supporters to like you, not hate you, right? So on paper, that sounds good, right? The question is,
Right.
has that really worked, right? Did it work out that way?
Right. Yeah. And so you said it seems like this year it seems to be a little bit more negative than previously in some
Yeah,
regards.
in some regards, right. And I guess it depends on your perspective, right? Because if your candidate's kind of occupying the same ideological space or sharing the same base, then maybe it makes sense for you to join up and say, all right, we're almost co-endorsing each other here, right? You can vote for me, that person, or that person. It's all good, rank us all, right? So as far as these hypothetical candidates would be concerned, it would actually be beneficial in terms of making things more positive. However, what you're seeing is candidates kind of holding hands and saying, vote for all of us, just don't vote for that person, right? And you're seeing that coming from both sides. Right now, the mayor's race in New York City has polarized between Cuomo and Mamdani, right? And so Cuomo supporters are saying, don't rank Mamdani. Mamdani supporters are saying, don't rank Cuomo. And
Well,
instead of saying, like it used to be, please vote for me. If you vote for me, I'll do this for you. I'll try to achieve this. Instead of focusing on that, the focus seems to be increasingly just don't vote for that one because they're bad, right?
right. Yeah. But has it, I mean, is that like inherently negative just to say don't vote for that person? I mean, kind of that's what the campaign is, right? You don't vote for the other person. But like, is it that they're taking a really negative tone when they're talking about not voting for the other person?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be toxic. I think, though, that it does lend itself to negative campaigning, right? If the message of the campaign becomes vote for all of us except for that person, well, why, right? The follow up question is why. And then you get into why that person is bad instead of focusing on why you're good, right? So I think
Hmm.
inherently it does make it more negative. And that's really what we've seen. We've seen people say, this person is the devil, that kind of thing. You can't vote for Mamdani because New York City will go to hell in a handbasket, or you can't vote for Cuomo because he killed your grandma with COVID or whatever. You know what I mean? So that's the kind
Right.
of stuff that you're hearing now, and you hear more of that now. To be fair, there are always negative comments during campaigns, so it's not like that's a new thing. But I guess the question is, has it become more negative? Has the focus shifted with this in a negative way?
Right. And what do you think? You think it has?
I think so. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not hearing enough to my taste about why candidates are good. All I'm seeing and hearing is about why candidates are bad. And why should there be a hashtag don't rank Cuomo or don't rank Mamdani? With ranked choice voting, you have up to five people to rank. You would think it would be rank me one, rank them two, rank them three. Let's pick a bunch of people to rank instead of rank everyone but that person.
But I mean, like, I guess it depends on who, if you know, who your competition is, right? If there is valid reason of, valid competition from someone, then I can see people saying, don't rank this person. You know what I mean? Like, if some other candidates aren't really gonna have a shot, there's no need to mention anything about them. Lost you. Your mic is on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say it. Yeah, if someone is competing with you next to you, I can understand. Like right now, it seems like Cuomo and Mamdani are the ones that have the shot, right? So if they're saying don't rank, if Mamdani's people are saying don't rank Cuomo, and Cuomo's people are saying, the same, don't rank Mamdani, I can understand that because they have the shot to overturn each other.
Sure. Oh, yeah. But that's what's happening, right? And so the system is set up to incentivize that type of campaigning, right? So that's
Right.
really the question that we're getting at. Does ranked choice voting incentivize more negative campaigning than before?
I would say I'm thinking just between the two front runners, it might do that. Like some of the other people, it wouldn't
Okay,
matter.
well, let me give you an example of what's going on. There's a commercial on TV right now.
Uh-huh.
If you watch it, it just talks about how Andrew Cuomo is bad, right? All the bad stuff about him, which is not new. I'm not saying attack
That's
as
not no, yeah, not new.
right? Okay. So you watch this ad about how Andrew Cuomo is the worst person ever, right? You get to the end of the ad, right? And it says paid for by friends of Brad Lander or whatever. Brad Lander.
Right.
It doesn't say one good word about Brad Lander. It doesn't say vote for Brad Lander, rank Brad Lander. It's a literal, just a commercial about how Andrew Cuomo is bad, right? That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Like you're not even seeing candidates. And this is not just between Cuomo and Mamdani now. This is Brad Lander, who was like the third place person at this point,
Right.
right? So you can argue what he's angling for. Maybe he's trying to get a spot in Mamdani's administration if he wins. I don't know what the deal is with that, but
Right.
it's literally an attack ad against a candidate that doesn't even tell you to vote for the person who's paying for the ad.
Now that's a little different. Because generally, like you said, like campaigns like that would point out the negative points of other candidates is not new, but usually at the end it tells you now, why this candidate is the better
Right.
choice. And this
Right.
is just like that. Forget that.
Yeah.
Just don't vote for this guy, period.
Exactly. Exactly. And I guess the idea is if people are voting for up to five people, it doesn't even matter who those five people are as long as one of them isn't the main competition.
Right, right, right. So,
So it's definitely, like you said, it's new and interesting. It does change the dynamic. Maybe things will settle into a more peaceful place. Maybe it'll eventually do what it was meant to do. I don't know. But it just seems so far like it really hasn't delivered on that promise of making campaigning more positive and less toxic.
right. Yeah. So
All right. Well,
interesting. Now,
yeah.
now
So we put out
ranked choice voting is this is not the first year,
no.
but did this
This is,
happen
I believe this is
before
the
or was
second.
this,
This is the second cycle. So 2021 would have been the first time.
but was it happening in 2021 also? Or
Yeah,
is
it
it
happened
something?
in 2021. When we did the city council race last time, we had ranked choice voting.
But I mean, did this type of
Oh,
phenomenon
the
that you're seeing?
negativity.
Yeah.
So interestingly, yes, in a sense, because in our city council race, I guess we were the perceived front runner in the Democratic primary at the time. So you did see, for example, a press conference of I guess four other candidates, like the other four candidates, saying basically vote for anyone but Scala. So yeah, I guess that thing does happen. But I didn't
Yeah,
see
didn't you have a weren't you
it
playing
citywide to
around
this
with that?
magnitude until now.
Huh?
Say it again.
I said, weren't you playing around with that? Like you had like a meme up or something about
Oh,
Nelson.
that was yeah, that was in 2017. We took the Stop Scala logo that was printed on the opposition's flyers. We took that literally from their flyer and made that the profile picture on Facebook. But that was the general election of 2017.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, that was pre-ranked choice voting, right? Ranked choice came in 2021. And it's also worth noting, ranked choice voting only applies to primaries and special elections. It does not apply to general elections. And so we
Okay.
can get into that whole topic on that, right? Coming out of the primary, what's going to happen in the general election, especially with Eric Adams, the incumbent mayor, running as an independent candidate.
Right, right.
So in the
And it might be
meantime,
good. I think I saw a couple of posts. I think some people still are a little bit either confused or a little bit not on board with ranked choice voting.
yeah.
So maybe kind of clarifying what it does might be a good a good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, we can do that. I was going to say we can put out the poll as well, asking if people think that it's made campaigning more negative.
So, all right.
So, all right, why don't we do that real quick? Then we can explain more about it, I guess. The poll question of the week is: do you believe that ranked choice voting has made campaigning more negative?
And have you gone to the polls yet?
I would hope so. Oh, me personally,
Yeah,
yeah.
you, of
Oh, yeah.
course.
I would hope so. I'm sitting here, polls closed in 12 minutes. I actually early voted, and that's going to be something that's going to come into play probably in these results that we're going to start seeing tonight. The weather, the weather here was crazy, over 100 degrees. Um,
Hmm.
if you early voted this past week, you didn't have to deal with that, right? And so the question is, what is turnout going to be today, right, on election day, as opposed to the early vote? Because Cuomo's base is heavily dependent on that. They are the types that usually vote on election day historically, as opposed to the early vote. If you
Right,
looked at where the early vote came from, it came from Mamdani strongholds, right? Which makes sense. Typically, more younger and more progressive voters take advantage of the early voting, whereas your more old school, older voters are used to doing it on election day, right? So that's the dynamic you're seeing here. If the weather severely depressed the turnout today, that helps Mamdani because Cuomo needed a very strong turnout today to make up for the early vote push that Mamdani had.
right. Okay, okay.
So, but you were asking about how ranked choice voting works. Should we explain
I think, yeah,
how
make a
it works?
brief primer since, like you said, this is the second cycle of it. I have seen a few posts, people something they don't like it.
Yeah,
Others,
I'll be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I understand some of its advantages, right? It's not all bad, but fundamentally, I think we want more people to vote, more people to be engaged with the
right,
process, right? Fewer people to be disenfranchised or to feel disenfranchised, right? And the more complicated, the more convoluted you make the process, I
right,
think, or you're going to turn people away from it, right? It's hard enough finding one candidate that you like in most legends. Now you're asking us to pick five, right?
but they don't have to pick
No, you
five.
don't have to. You don't have to. And you don't need to use ranked choice voting. You can just pick one candidate. That's fine.
Right,
But you got to
yeah,
be careful with how you fill out your ballot. And this is potentially going to be a problem, right? Because now you don't just have the old school vote for this person or that person, right? That you usually do, or in a primary, it could be several candidates, but you're just picking one. Now you've got like a grid, right? So it does look a little more complicated because you've got all the candidates' names going down, and then across you've got your choices 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so you're
right,
going to have 25 I mean 5 times the number of candidates bubbles, right? If there are 10 candidates, there are going to be 50 bubbles on your sheet. So, and it's like a grid of bubbles. So, it is a little confusing, and you got to be careful with how you're filling it out because let's say you accidentally go down the line, right? So, like we said, columns are your choices, right? First choice is the first column, second choice, second column, and so on.
right,
Let's
right.
say you accidentally bubble in two candidates in that same column, right? So it looks like you're voting for two candidates as your first choice, right?
Right,
If you were to do that, that invalidates your whole ballot. Your whole ballot gets thrown out. Your vote doesn't
right,
count for nothing, right? Your whole ballot gets tossed in the trash if you do that. And so that's a real danger. Now,
right,
if you make the mistake conversely, right? If you, instead of choosing multiple candidates as your first choice, let's say you choose the same candidate as your first, second, third, and fourth choice, right? If you make that mistake, right, you fill in bubbles horizontally next to the same name, that doesn't invalidate your whole ballot. It doesn't count more than once, right? It just
right.
counts as one vote for the person. It basically disregards the subsequent bubbles that you made.
Okay, okay, yeah,
So, like I said, it is kind of convoluted, and I don't really like that people's ballots can be disregarded so easily. But then again, how would you remedy that, right?
right,
If you and I are on a ballot and someone votes for both of us for their first choice, how could you discern what that voter was trying to do? So you kind of have
right.
to get rid of that vote, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think, like you said, it sounds a little bit, I mean, I wouldn't say it sounds very complicated. It sounds very different, and could be a little confusing for some voters. But I think the trying it. is a good thing. I mean, I don't know how many cycles do you let it go before you think, okay, maybe it's not working how we wanted it, but the fact that they actually put it into practice to try it to see if they could do
Right.
something better or
Well,
different, I think is a good thing.
so and we're going to get into how votes are actually tabulated under the system
Yeah.
in a second here, but just to follow up on that, one of the side effects I think of it is when people endorse candidates for office now, like, your local elected official might say, these are my endorsements for the upcoming race.
Mm.
Obviously, historically, they pick one person for that seat, especially if one person is going to hold the seat, or
Sure.
the one Democratic nominee, let's say, right?
Right.
They're going to say, this is who I think you should pick in the primary. Now they're kind of using ranked choice voting as a cop out, because what they'll do is they'll say, since you can vote for more than one, I endorse three of these candidates or all five of these candidates. And it's like, come on, that's kind of cheap. To me, it's cheap, right? Like, there's only going to be one nominee. So for the elected official, say, I think you should vote for all of them. Yeah, okay, great. That doesn't give
Yeah.
you any information at all.
Yeah, that now see that I think could be more of a I could have more of a problem with that. Like stand on business. Like who are you
Right, right.
who are
At
you
least give
choosing, or are
us,
you just trying to like hedge your bets?
yeah,
Like
at least give us your ranking, right? That would be more
or
helpful. Like,
something. Yeah, I could
yeah,
see
like
I could see
I vote for this person first choice, this person second choice, this person third choice, right? Then at least you're telling us who you prefer over the other, as opposed to like, I'm just going to endorse everybody. Like, that
that.
to me,
Yeah.
that's just an excuse to not make an endorsement, just to play the political.
I could see that. I could see that.
And then you saw something like, I'm not going to say who it is or whatever, but I saw, for example, an elected official put out their endorsements for mayor, right? But they said, this is my first choice. This is my second choice. Then they said, for third choice, vote for this person or that person. For fourth choice, vote for this person or that person. It was the same two people. For fifth choice, vote for this person. But the way it was formulated, it kind of left room for one person not being even chosen. In fact, it might have even been worse than that. It might have even been for third choice, pick this person or that person, and didn't say for fourth choice, pick the same two people again. It had a different person for fourth choice. And so basically
Maybe
for
just like
third,
screw that guy.
for third, no, saying for third choice, like pick this person or that person. But if you were to pick this person and follow, the recommendations, you would leave out that other person they're recommending third altogether, because they're saying,
Yeah.
well, right, for fourth place for this guy, fifth place for this guy. So when it was at third place and it was like, you pick this this one, choose your own adventure, this one or that one. Well, you pick one of them, you're leaving the other one out entirely off the ballot. But they were just recommending you choose that person third potentially. You know what I mean?
Maybe he wanted to leave that person off the ballot entirely.
But this is
Screw
what
this
I mean.
guy.
Like, it does get kind of convoluted and confusing, in my opinion, because you're also expecting voters now to do a lot more research on all these different candidates, and not just determine which one you like the best, but rank them in order of preference. Like,
Right,
you know what I mean? Like I said, we're trying to get more people to come in and be part of the process. And you might be asking too much of people, I think, for
right.
for historically low turnouts, right?
So that was going to be my
We
question.
get such, especially in local races, we get a very low percentage of the electorate voting. You know what I mean? Now,
Right.
proponents of ranked choice voting tell you that this will potentially increase turnout because I don't know. I'm trying to be charitable to the position, but I guess what they're saying is someone can win now who has a greater share of the electorate's values, right? Because
Right. I can
someone
see
isn't
that.
winning with a split vote where it's like, 10 candidates running, this person has 22% and they win, right? Because with ranked choice voting, they start knocking off, we'll get into how it works. You start knocking off people who come in last and et cetera, and reallocating the votes. And so ideally the winner is going to have a broader coalition of support, and
Right.
that premise is supposed to attract, I guess, more people into the system, right? Like, okay, now we know when
Right.
we vote, we're not just throwing out our votes, we're not voting cynically, just picking the person we want, or
Right.
lesser of two evils, whatever. Like, we can still pick for our ideological favorite, number one, and then have backup choices in case they don't win.
Right. So and I get that. And it's logical. It sounds like a logical
Yeah.
or fair type of system. And like I know you said this is only the second cycle it's being used on. Was there any, I know this since the data is very low, was the turnout any different in the first cycle that it was used than prior?
The answer is yes. But we cannot attribute that to ranked choice voting. We have to attribute that to COVID because that was 2021, and that
So
was
it was a lower turnout.
no, it was much higher because that was when they started mailing ballots to everyone's house almost automatically. That was never a thing before.
So yeah, so people didn't have to go to the polling
No,
location.
no,
They
they were
could
telling people,
vote
they were
at
still
home.
telling people, yeah, don't even show up. Just we're going to send you the ballot, just fill it out and send it back in.
And
So,
participation increased when people didn't have to do anything.
oh yeah, when they got the ballot sent directly to them, yeah, forget about it. Yeah, a lot of people sent that back.
That might need to be on the table too. But I wonder that probably
Right.
costs a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they did make permanent changes because in New York, previously, right, prior to COVID, you had to have an excuse if you were going to vote absentee, if you were going to do a mail-in vote, right? You had to have an excuse. You had to like, swear you were going to be out of state that day or whatever. Now we have no excuse absentee voting, so anyone can just go and request it and get it, right? So that's a permanent change since COVID.
Well, yeah. So I wonder if you'll be able to know if the ranked choice voting does contribute to an increase. If you see an increase this time, I guess you'd see
It's
just
it's it's, it's going to be so hard to determine if that's the reason, all right? Because like
because people
it
have this no
started,
choice
it
or
started
there's
with
no excuse.
yeah, exactly. It started with COVID, and really the whole world changed. And with COVID, now the culture has shifted dramatically more
Right.
towards absentee voting, right? Or what they call
Right.
mail-in voting. So
I wonder, and I'm curious now what the absentee vote count is going to be. Like how many are going to vote that way this time as well?
you broke up for a second. Can you repeat that last part?
I said I'm curious about what the number is going to be like for the absentee voters in this election.
Right.
Like, is it going to be high like before? Is it going to be an increase?
No, and you can look at the data since 2021 and other elections, right? It's not as high as it was at the height of COVID, but it's still higher than it was pre-COVID.
But has it overall made the overall turnout a little bit higher? Because like people, maybe extra people voting because now they don't have to go anywhere.
A little bit. But like I said, turnout was at its highest in 2020, 2021. That was part of when, Trump was saying, election is stolen. Look at all these extra votes. How can they all? That's because literally everybody was voting. They were just sending ballots to people's houses. That was
Right.
like the most high turnout election you're ever going to see. So yeah, it's not as high as that, but it's still higher than it was pre-COVID. And part of that
Right.
also, I think, is because Trump's first election actually did invigorate people to come out and get involved, even in
Yeah.
local places, more than ever before. It kind of woke people up. And so that might be a silver lining of sorts, right? But you are seeing more people engaged now than ever before. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, so I wonder, it'd be interesting now to see what the cost was of delivering the ballots to people's houses during that height of COVID, what that cost was
Mhm.
compared to the normal holding normal
Right.
elections. And
Right.
see if there's a big cost increase, if there's some kind of a savings,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you said there was a definitely an increase in turnout, which is what we want. And so if we could do that at either the same cost, slightly lower or slightly above, that might be worth it to roll that out.
Right. Right. And it is very easy now. I mean, and some people have concerns about, I guess, exploiting or abusing the system because campaigns will sometimes go online and request absentee ballots on behalf of their supporters or their perceived supporters. And then some people will cry foul about that, like, hey, this person didn't actually request one themselves. The campaign did on their behalf. So, why are we just sending ballots to people's houses who didn't ask for it, right? But if you go online yourself as a voter, you certainly are entitled to do that now in New York with no excuse. You can just go online and say, I want a ballot sent to my house and get one. So it is a very easy process.
Would that be wrong though? Like, let's say the campaign decided, or the campaign decided to put out the money
Mm-hmm.
to send.
They're not putting out the money. They're not putting out the money. They're just going online and
Oh,
they're
they just
requesting it from the Board of Elections.
okay. I'm trying to see if that would be wrong though. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
morally wrong. I don't know if that's
I
morally.
don't think it's morally wrong
I
because
think
you're not telling them who to vote for. They're just getting the
yeah,
ballot in the mail. They're still going to make
right,
their choice. You're just
right.
making it easier for them to vote as long as you're not putting anything in there that
I think,
says,
yeah, I think some people have concerns about ballots just being sent out all over the place, especially if they're not requested. You know what I mean? So some
yeah,
people are still uneasy about the idea of voting by mail, right? So this, I
right.
guess, tries to strike a balance and say, listen, we support it, we have it, but we just want you to request the ballot if you want it, as opposed to someone else just like I can just like send you a ballot and then like start sending ballots everywhere. Some people are a little uneasy about that.
I get that. Um, but yeah, it sounds interesting. All right, so
So, all right, so let's really quickly explain how it works. I know it's confusing to a lot of people how the tabulations actually work, but it's important because polls just closed in New York. So I'm going to switch over actually to election coverage now.
oh, let's see. There's probably nothing's come in
It'll
yet.
start trickling in, but it's going to be important because
Oh, okay, wait, there is I'm looking right here on PBS has a live a live feed here. Board of Elections doesn't have anything yet, but PBS has Mamdani way in the lead,
because
actually.
that's the early vote, right? So the early vote is the first vote to be counted. Like we said, the
Right,
early vote came primarily from his bases, right? His neighborhoods. And so
right. But
now you
right
can start
now,
seeing, it's too early, obviously, in the night. You can start seeing Cuomo's bases counted and see if he catches up.
right. So this is an estimate. So what PBS is reporting is AP estimates, and it's got Mamdani at 43.1%, Cuomo at 34%,
Right.
Lander at 13,
Yeah.
Adrian Adams at 4, and Stringer at 2.
Right. Which
Um,
makes sense. That's about what you would expect from the early vote totals.
okay.
So we'll see now, like I said, when the election day returns come in, right, to see how that ends up. But here's what I'll say.
Wait, who's Paperboy Prince? What?
Paperboy Love Prince. He's a perennial candidate here. He's a funny guy. He paints his face like ICP, I think now. Like he's kind of out there, but he runs in everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
He's a rapper also.
he's got 0.1% of the vote.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always on the ballot. So we
Oh,
just had a
I'm gonna get
conversation
him.
about absentee votes, right? Here's why we're likely not going to get a winner in the mayor's race tonight.
Uh,
The ranked choice voting can only happen after all of the first choice votes are counted, right? Which means that they have to open up the absentee votes prior to doing a ranked choice tabulation. So that's going to happen over the next several days. That's not going to happen immediately, right? These absentee votes get opened up at the Board of Elections with representatives from the campaigns, with lawyers, right, overseeing the process to make sure it's fair and that ballots are counted properly, one by one, right? They get opened up, they're inspected. The lawyers can object, right? Like we talked about before, hey, that shouldn't count. They were voting for more than one person. You know, of course, they do a machine scan as well, but one by one, there's an opportunity for the lawyers and the campaigns to put their arguments on the record in case it goes to court and a judge has to review the objections. So this is a process and it's a fair one. I've been involved in it many times. It's fair because it gives everyone the opportunity to inspect these votes as they're opened and make sure that they're done correctly, right? Make sure that no one is messing up here. So that's going to take some time. And if we have a very close race, which this is looking like it's going to be a close race, we're unlikely to have a clear winner here for quite some time because that has to happen first. And so that leads into the brief explanation as to how ranked choice voting is tabulated here, right? The premise is a candidate wins when they have over 50% of the vote, right? And so again, you're not winning with just a small plurality. You're supposed to have at least some support of the majority of the voters here. And how do you get that, right? On the first round, with so many candidates, I think there are 11 candidates on the ballot for mayor this year. You're very unlikely to have someone with 50% plus one at the end of this first round, right? Again, so many candidates. Now, it is somewhat polarized, right? So it isn't like all those 11 candidates. Paperboy Love Prince isn't doing as well as Brown Lander and the others, right? You're really seeing most of the votes in the first round go to either Cuomo or Mamdani, and then some with Lander and maybe Adrian Adams, and and pretty much everyone else is going to be at the bottom there. So, all right, let's say no one has that 50% after the first round, right? As we expect. Then what
Okay.
happens is they eliminate the candidate who came in last place, right? And again, this happens after the absentees and everything are counted, right? So you have your clear
Okay.
picture of what the first round looks like. All right, no one has 50. Last place candidate eliminated. So they're gone. They're out of the running now. What you do is you look at everyone who voted for that last place candidate as their first choice, right? Whoever voted for that last place person, and then
Right.
you say, okay, on this ballot, who do they rank second? Right. Well, they're going to still be in the running because you just eliminated this last place person already.
And you
So
add those votes to
you
the
distribute that right to that person, and you keep doing that. So all these last place candidates ballots, they're now out, but they're not out completely because they've been redistributed. Their votes have been given to the person that was ranked second on all those ballots. Now you have round two, right, with
right.
everyone but one. So let's say there are 10 candidates left now. Same process. Does someone have 50% yet? No. All right. Who's last now of the remaining candidates? You repeat this process. You keep doing that. You eliminate the last place candidate until someone reaches that 50% plus one threshold, right?
Okay, got you, got you. Yeah, this sounds counting wise, it sounds like it's a much more complex than the
Yeah,
other
but
way.
there are computers that do that pretty easily.
Right, right.
And it's just a matter of making sure all the absentee votes are counted so you have a clear first round result, right? Then you can go to the computer, the algorithm, and just spit out the right choice tabulation.
Right. Well,
That's why they
looking at
call it instant runoff voting. Another name for it is instant runoff voting, right? Because what we used to do in New York City, because we used to try to deal with this problem also of someone winning without getting the majority. What it used to be is if you didn't have over 40%, there would be a runoff, right? So they actually had another election of the top two finishers, right? Which we've seen many times in the past here in New York City, right? Someone gets 30 something percent, someone else gets, 30, 37, 35, let's say. No one hits that 40% mark. There, in a few weeks later, there's an actual whole nother election with those two people only. And so this was meant to save money, right? Because it's an instant runoff. So you can
right,
just look at the ballots and say, it's like saying if there was a runoff, who would you pick, kind of.
right, and that makes sense. So if we're looking at the results as of now, and these are very early, and these are also AP estimates, Salma Bartholomew is at risk of being kicked off if we were looking at it right
Right,
now.
right.
So
Where's
she's
Paperboy Love Prince? Is Paperboy safe?
he's gonna make it past the first round according to
That's the
right
first
now.
round. All right.
So she's at 512 votes. He's at 588 votes. So at least he's going to make it past the first round. I think congratulations are in order for Curtis Silva. He has dominated his race.
Yeah. Well, I thought he was unopposed. Did he have opposition?
No, no, he was
Oh,
unopposed. So
okay. Yeah.
he's dominated his
So
race.
he is going to be the Republican candidate for mayor. And I wanted to get into that briefly as well, because normally in
And
New
we
York
reviewed
City,
his platform.
we reviewed his platform and it actually looked kind of like a moderate Democrat by some standards, although we said there were
Right,
some right wing points on there, right?
right, right. We were surprised at some
We
of
were
his
kind of
stuff.
surprised, but then again, it's New York City, and that was kind of the point I was going to make. In New York City, citywide, right? Because there are conservative districts within the city, a few, but citywide, right? When the whole city votes, the Republicans don't really have a chance because they're so outnumbered by Democrats here. That's why you tend to have Democratic citywide officials. However, there is a possibility this year that Sliwa can win, as crazy as it might sound, because Eric Adams is running not as a Democrat, but as an independent, and he is the incumbent mayor. So it depends on how these votes end up getting split. Like we said, in general elections, there is no ranked choice voting. It's just whoever has the most votes. And so
Right.
someone can sneak in there with the plurality, right? Let's say they're all around 33%. Someone can just get a few more than the others and win. So it is plausible. It's not the most likely scenario, but I would say with
Right.
Donnie as a candidate, he's going to be a lot more polarizing than Cuomo, and the polls do show that, right? If Mamdani, who is an avowed Democratic socialist, is a Democratic nominee, you're going to have a lot of Democratic voters uncomfortable with supporting his candidacy.
They might go to Adams.
They may go to Adams, exactly. Some may even go to Sliwa in more conservative areas, but yeah, Adams is going to pick up a lot of those votes. And so that's going to be interesting, right? Because
Adams could dilute the
he's the nominee.
pool
Yeah,
between the two.
If Cuomo is a nominee, polls show he wins comfortably because he's kind of like more like a safe Democrat, right? But when you start dealing with Mamdani, who is a DSA candidate, that does make things more dynamic.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
looks like we can make a prediction here, without a prediction, a call. Jumaane Williams has been reelected public advocate because he won with such a decisive victory on that first round. 73% of the vote to Jennifer Rajkumar's 18%. So
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Um, I'm
yeah,
not. I don't know. I guess you're on the New York State Board of Elections, or you
I'm
were.
actually seeing this on New York One,
Okay.
the
Okay.
channel here.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, back in action for Jumaane Williams.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. We need to see what happens with the controllers race. That might be tight too. Do we have any early returns on that?
I don't see anything. So what I'm looking at on PBS is just the mayor's results, and then the Board of Elections. The only I don't see any other races listed aside from the judicial districts.
Oh, really?
And there's no results on those. I could be on the wrong page, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it is very early in the night, as we said.
yeah,
See if I can find something online here.
yeah. I'm looking going to the top to see if there's a link going directly to it, but I don't see anything here. And the link that I got to it went straight to it just says unofficial election night results. And it's
Oh,
still
here you
just
go. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
it's
I've
giving
got the
judicial
page up
stuff.
though. The page is up. I'm on the Board of Elections website. Does anything show on here? Yeah, there are results
Right.
here.
Really? I'm on the wrong page then. What are you on?
So when you click at the very top of the screen, it says unofficial election night results.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
have a link.
mayor. So you click on that link: mayor, public advocate, city controller, district attorney, etc.
I do not have this, sir.
Let me send it to you right now in the chat here. And it looks like Mark Levine has an early lead, but again, that's going to be mainly the early vote that you're seeing at this point, because
Right. And
precincts all over the city, right? They close at 9 o'clock, and they've got to actually take the votes off the machines and report back. So that's a process that's not going to happen immediately, but you'll start seeing that over the course of the day.
and and I think it's important to reiterate, like you just said, like these are um early results and things can and will change over the course of the time. And this is what and the reason why I bring it up is because this is one of the premises that some of the Republicans in the other elections, I think it was the presidential elections, were trying to base their stolen election thing off. Oh, well, he said
Oh,
had
really?
such a lead.
Oh,
How
right.
did it change?
Right. All of a sudden, yeah, all of a sudden,
All
all
of
these
a
mail-in
sudden,
votes
it's
came and
it's
they
like
appeared out of
because
nowhere.
yeah, because not everything was counted yet. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so this is something that commonly happens. So
But here's the
if
question, though.
someone's leading right now doesn't mean
Yeah,
that they're going to be
no,
leading
absolutely.
later
And
on.
if you were to handicap this stuff, what you would really doing is saying, okay, who's expected to have the lead in their early vote count, which is what you get now, right? What you get in the
Right.
beginning. And then you're looking at, okay, how much do you expect them to lead, right? So, for example, you expect Mark Levine to win in the early vote. You definitely expect Mamdani to win in the early vote. So you wouldn't look at who's just winning. You look at the margin. How big is their lead, right? Because
Right.
that tells you how well Cuomo potentially is starting out from the two, or how much ground there is to make up. So here's a question I wanted to ask you, though. Should we
Uh,
have a system where we can't tell the winner for days or weeks?
should we have one? Why would why
Well,
not?
in today's world, right, with the technology we have today, and even
Oh,
even the fact that in prior, let's say, generations, we typically knew who won an election right away. So now in 2025, it's taking us longer to announce a winner, right?
why is that, do you think?
Because of the increase of absentee voting, right? Like we said, in New York,
Right, right, right.
example, you had to have an excuse to vote absentee. It was kind of an obscure thing. And the early vote as well, although we do have the early vote tallies, but there's the ranked choice voting. So there's these extra things that we're doing now that really we didn't do. In the past, it was you just went to vote on election day and that was it. So when the
Right.
polls closed, you got the votes off the machine and that was it. The absentee votes weren't going to make any difference because there weren't that many, unless it's like a razor tight race, right? If someone was winning by a comfortable enough margin and there really weren't that many absentee votes, that wasn't going to tilt the scales, and one way or the other. So you knew. Now, like we said, you really don't know right away, and should that be the case?
Um, yeah. But I mean, you would think that you'd be able to have more, faster results with better technology. But
Yeah.
if you've got, like you said, the mail-in stuff that allows more people to actually participate, then I mean, really can't be helped.
But here's a question. Because here's what some states do. New York doesn't do it like this. I believe Pennsylvania does, for example, though don't quote me for sure, but I know some states do it like this. They actually start counting the absentee votes prior to election night. Now, there's a danger. There's a real danger in doing that because if the result gets out, if someone leaks it or it's becomes public, that can skew how people vote on election day. So that's
Right,
why we don't do that here, right? We just hold
right,
them and open them after the fact. We don't want that to influence anything. But if you want quicker results, you could start counting them early. You would have to have them all in as opposed to postmarked, right? Because, do you say that absentee votes are counted if they're postmarked by election day or if they're actually received by election day? Now,
right,
if they're received by election day, obviously you can start counting them early.
right.
However, that also poses some complications because you don't know for sure when it's going to arrive, right? Someone can
Right.
mail it. Hey, I sent mine in 2 weeks ago. How come I didn't come? And then people could start playing games with that. Oops, we forgot to get that one. Well, or it's just a matter of some people's post office works better than others. Do you want to penalize them for the mail slow that week? So if you say it has to be postmarked by election day, that seems to be more fair because then
Right.
you know that if you mailed it by that day, it's going to count. However, it does make things take longer.
Well, I think there can be a happy medium there too, though, right? So I agree it should be postmarked by election day. I think that makes most sense and it's the most fair. But you could do start the count early
Yeah.
if what they do is they just feed it into the system and then the system won't release results until election day. So they can put all of the ballots in, the computer's counting them, and then they
Right.
won't see any results until
Keep in mind, though, keep in mind that there is a requirement that these absentee ballots get counted by hand because they get inspected to make sure that they're
okay.
filled out the right way. Do they sign it right? You know what I mean? Like, do they do it correctly? Isn't it
Right.
just like you go to vote and you just scan it in and it gets counted automatically? Like I said, there is a machine that will count them, but there's
Right.
also a requirement that they get a hand reviewed too. So that's why it does take more time. But to your
So
point,
maybe the preliminary count could
it
be
could, right? You could do that. You'd run the risk again though of results leaking. Someone could be there like, hey, Ma'am Di is getting all these votes. Holy, maybe that somehow affects how people vote on election day. Maybe.
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if the computer count first and
Mhm.
then the hand count starts after polls close.
But you still got to do the hand count. The hand count is what takes time. The
That's
computer
what I
count
mean.
doesn't take any time.
Yeah. But I mean, like, if you're trying to get a faster estimate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Say that they go ahead and run all of those absentee votes through the computer and the computer takes its count but doesn't release the data, right? And then on election night, after the polls close, then it shows its data number. The and that can just be a tentative number
Tentative
until
number.
the hand counts are actually completed, and then you get a maybe a better estimate of
That's
who's
interesting. So you're not doing it to have an official result yet. You're doing it to kind of put the public at ease a little bit and say, all right, this is kind of where we think we stand so far.
possibly, yeah,
It's something to think about, I guess. You
right.
still have people crying foul though when those estimated numbers don't turn out to be the real numbers, right? Because ballots get thrown out.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because then they could be like, well, this person had like let's say 1,000 votes, and then now it comes out like some of those weren't valid, some of these weren't filled out right. Now they've got like 850, and they're like, oh, well, now you just tried to screw
prime
this person.
fraud or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, look, there's no perfect system here, right? There you can
Right.
just try different things, like you said before. They're trying ranked choice voting, but so here is my next question on that, right? They're trying this, so it's either going to create a system now where people start winning because of ranked choice voting, right? Who weren't winning on the old system, let's say, but they're winning with this system, or it's going to create a system where people really aren't winning. It's not making any difference, right? So far, with a few exceptions, the candidate who got the most first choice votes won the election, right? So ranked choice voting didn't really change the result of many elections. It happened maybe a handful of times over the many that we've had these past two cycles, a couple of
Hmm.
times. But I would say 90+% of the time, it doesn't make any difference in the final result. So A, is that a problem? I mean, are we going through all this hoopla with ranked choice voting and it's not even really making a difference? And B, when it does make a difference, is there a problem with that? I mean, how would you like to be the candidate who got the most votes but lost the race? Does that actually disenfranchise people and make people feel like the system is messed up in a way as well?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That would probably be making me a little upset. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
I get that. I get that.
I got the most votes, but I lost. What is this? You know what I mean?
Right.
And you got to explain to people, who don't really know, who don't follow it that closely. Well, they got the most first choice votes, but the votes were reallocated, and after the reallocation, they no longer had the most votes. To someone who's not really tuned in that much, that might sound like some nonsense. That might be like, what is this, like voter socialism? It's like, no, I mean, people might not get what's going on with that.
Voter socialism.
Yeah, like you're reallocating my vote. What does that mean? Why can't I just vote for the person I want to vote for?
Right. In the comments, a comment is saying that they're predicting it's going to take 8 rounds. If we only ranked 5 people, how does that work? I think it kind of went over that a little bit with just how
Yeah,
the tally was.
right. Yeah, no, they can eliminate a lot of people because what ends up happening is the people who come in last who don't have that many votes to begin with,
Right.
it's almost like they weren't even there, right? Like, if someone comes in there with a couple hundred votes, okay, those couple hundred votes now get added to the other candidates, and now you're just left with one fewer candidate, but not much has really changed yet.
Right. So, okay. Let's
Uh,
see. What we
yeah, look, it's all something to watch and learn from, right? And get more data on and see what's working, what's not, how things should be adjusted. Like we said, there's no perfect system, so we can only try to make improvements where we can, right? And sometimes it's a matter of trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't.
Right, absolutely. Let's see what we got here. Trying to see if we have any. Hey, what happened?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so no changes so far, it looks like. Oh, here we go. PBS has changed a little bit, so Mamdani's still at 43%, Cuomo at 35, Lander at 12. Paperboy Prince has picked
Okay.
up another looks like almost 300 votes. Hey.
Yeah. So it looks like so far we've got Mamdani with 252,000 approximately,
Right,
Cuomo with 205,000. So
right.
pretty close, right? Because we're expecting
Yeah,
probably like a million votes when this is all said and done or more.
right. And that's crazy. Um, so this is
Yeah, it's
saying
crazy, but when you think about the city has 8.5 million people,
that's what I mean, like only a million. Like
yeah.
that's a
You can be
total.
elected mayor of New York City with under a million,
Right, right. That's
way under a million votes, because that's like the total turnout.
right. So
Yeah,
that's crazy. It looks like according to this, the percentage of scanners reported is 44%.
right.
So okay, so far,
Yeah, so turnout is so here you go. Like I'm looking at this now. The total turnout in the mayor's race is 581,000, and you're saying that's under half of the scanners counted. So it looks like you're on par for over a million there, right?
right. At least, yeah. So right now, according to the Board of Elections, 580,000 votes have been counted, and that's 44.46 scanners reporting in.
Right, right. Now it's not going to be an exact
Right.
right.
That's the scanners, not voters.
Exactly, scanners, not voters, but it gives you some general idea.
Right. Um, Comment in the, let's see, we have a comment. Did we do ranked choice voting for governor? I don't remember.
No, no,
No.
we don't have it statewide yet. There's talk of that, but we only have it in city races so far.
Right. Right. So, all right.
So yeah, like we said, the general election even doesn't have ranked choice voting. So could we see Eric Adams reelected even? That's possible, right?
You know what? I'm just kind of thinking here, like, could it be? Now this just thinking out loud here, because we've seen him cozying up to the current administration. Could he be staying in the race as an independent to try to get the Republican to take the lead, so that again the administration has another person that's just gonna fall in line?
maybe. I mean, who knows with Eric Adams these days? I don't think Adams is a fan of Curtis Lewa, but maybe we're beyond that at this point. Maybe, it could be. It could be. Honestly, though, I think he is invigorated by the recent success of Mamdani because I think he sees that as his best
An
shot at
outsider type
reelection.
of
And that's what
thing.
he said. To his credit, he said all along he's running for re-election. Now, politicians always say that. You don't know what their true intentions are. He could be saying that even if he's not planning on winning, but he has always said he's running to win and he predicts he's going to win. He's got a
Yeah.
shot. If Mamdani does become the Democratic nominee, it becomes an interesting three-way race. Now, people have even mentioned to me, well, there are actually more than three candidates running, but things get polarized, and you can have like your three major candidates, and I don't know how
Right.
much of an impact the other candidates are really going to have in this, but it does become, I think, a more open race, right? More unpredictable race if Mamdani is the nominee. Yeah, yeah, because New York City is a Democratic city, but most people aren't identifying as socialists, Democratic socialists, or
Right.
they don't go that far. So it's like a lightning rod, like you said. A lot of people, they're gonna perhaps look at the more traditional Eric Adams or even Curtis Lewa in that scenario.
Yeah, and if it splits it enough, I'm just thinking like imagine this current administration with a Republican mayor in New York City. Yeah, it could be a bad sight.
With the Republican mayor in New York City. That's interesting. You know what? Look, these are such crazy times. There is polling out there that suggests it's possible for there to be a Republican governor again, too. Not the most likely scenario, but it's within the realm of possibility.
Right. Yeah. I think yeah, but that's not as far-fetched as
Yeah.
a Republican mayor of NYC, right?
Right. Although, people will mention we had
Sure.
Giuliani in the 90s, we had Bloomberg after that.
Right.
However, things were a little bit different than demographically. You do have more Democrats now than ever before. So, with that said, people may be Democrat on paper, but this past year, even in New York City, a lot of them voted Republican. And so, it's just that kind of era that we're in.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see how things run.
we'll see. But I think the bottom line here is going to be, don't take these early numbers as gospel. We explained all the
Yes.
factors at play. I don't want people to be like, oh, how come such and such candidate had a big lead on election night, and then all of a sudden the next day or the next week things flipped and cry foul. I can see that happening. I can see people, if their candidate doesn't win, especially if they were winning tonight, being really upset and thinking something is going on here. No,
Right.
it's the system. It's legitimate. We may not like it, but it is legitimately how the system currently is set up. Like, you are expecting to see this to be very dynamic, these numbers to be shifting. Like we said, the
Right.
early numbers here reflect mostly the early vote counts. You're going to see
Right.
tonight's vote come in and change it, and you're going to see the absentee votes come in and change it, and you're going to see ranked choice voting come in and change it, right? So keep in mind, a lot of shifting is going to be happening here.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
all right.
All right. Well, good discussion. We'll see what happens next week. We'll have a clearer picture, right? We can go
Right.
from
You
there.
have a Democratic nominee, most likely.
Perhaps, although I'm hearing we may not have one until somewhere in July, early July, depending on how things are going. What day is next Tuesday, for the record? July 1st? Yeah.
Yes.
May not have it by July 1st. We may not.
Okay.
We might, but it may take a little bit longer than that for the absentees to come in and everything. So don't forget, there's also a requirement for people overseas in the military. That you got to give them time to. It's like we said, a lot of outstanding votes to count.
Right. All right.
We'll
Sounds
know more.
good.
But whatever the case is, we'll know more than we know now, right? And we can go from there. The last thing I wanted to touch on, because we did say we were going to, is the Jessica Ramos situation. I know.
Almost in the morning.
I was going to say that. Ramos in the morning. We looked at her website. It kind of looked like a news reporter, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So she is not getting a lot of votes now, which is to be expected.
But then she dropped out. She dropped out, so
exactly. Now,
she's still dominating Paperboy Prince, though.
Some people might be asking, well, if she dropped out, then how come her name was still on the ballot? Because it was too late to take her off the ballot, right?
Right.
Statutory deadline, and it's very, very tight. So she was already on the ballot. That was sealed already. That was done. Then she said she was no longer in the race, so her name had to remain on the ballot. People had the option theoretically to vote for her, as we're seeing many did not. However, I just wanted to talk about the coverage that we saw around her dropping out and endorsing Cuomo, because I think people felt maybe betrayed by that. But you see this in Democratic primaries and Republican for that matter, in any primary, you see it all the time, right? Someone dropping out and endorsing one of their opponents.
Well,
So
yeah, absolutely, sure.
I don't know what was so spectacular or different about that. I think maybe people thought she would be in more of a progressive lane, and they wanted her to go with Mamdani over Cuomo.
Was she more of a progressive?
Yeah, I think ideologically, but she's also pragmatic. She's known for being pragmatic. She got her start working in the de Blasio administration. And, she does campaign as a progressive, but she's also a pragmatic politician. And, so she may have been trying to back the winner as well. Like, who's the most viable candidate in this race? That might have
Right.
played into it. So she's a politician. She politics. You saw the same thing when people ran for president, right? People
Right.
started dropping out and endorsing Biden. Well, I guess some people might have been upset by that, but were they crucified to the level that Ramos was? I mean, Ramos really got hit hard, I think, over this. And there were even articles I saw that, in my opinion, were distorting what happened, because one of the headlines says something like, after Ramos endorses Cuomo, all these progressive groups are no longer backing her. They're pulling their back, but she's not in the race anymore. What do you expect? Like that? That's so crazy, right?
Yeah, who would they wouldn't be backing
They
her
made it
anymore.
sound like, yeah, like she did something so terrible she lost their support. Like, no, she said I'm no longer in the race. Of course, their support is going to go to someone else now.
Right. Yeah,
I found that to be wild.
I wonder what that's about. Unless she was seen as like an
I
extreme
think it's about people
progressive.
feeling betrayed. It's again, this goes back to the original topic, right? The toxicity that we're seeing, right? Whether it's ranked choice voting or not, that's creating it. We do have a very toxic environment, and I think people felt betrayed that she wasn't on that anybody but Cuomo train. That's what it was.
But I mean, what kind of what did she do, or what part of her background campaign or anything gave people that impression that she would be on that train?
She ran as more of a progressive candidate. So if you know her background,
Uh,
she first got elected to the state Senate running against an incumbent who was part of what they call the IDC, which was the Independent Democratic Conference. And this was a power sharing agreement between Republicans who had control of the Senate at the time. They had the majority, and some Democrats. So they together formed a coalition, and it was a way for these Democrats who were technically in the minority to kind of be part of the majority in a way, right? They said, all right, like you're forming this coalition with us, so we're going to give you committee chairs. Normally, only the majority party gets to chair committees. They're saying we're going to give you committee chairs. We're going to do things for you as if you were a Republican in this legislature because you're aligned with us in some way with this coalition.
right.
So, just
That
people.
kind of
There weren't that many Democrats who did it, but for a time, it actually did make up the difference, believe it or not. This is why it was so controversial initially. The Republicans got the majority with the few of these Democrats because it was so close, right, at the margins. But
so it kind of means she that kind of would give the impression she's kind of anti-establishment to a
right, right.
degree.
So she came in running against one of the few Democrats who did this, right? But she ran against him with the idea of I'm a true Democrat, right? I'm more pure, I guess, right? So I think
Right.
that's why there was an expectation that she goes with the ideologically pure, right? Like she passes that purity test, And again, it's probably an unrealistic expectation to put on her, but I think
Right.
that's why some people had that impression of her, right? Because
Right. Because in this field, I mean, that establishment candidate would be Cuomo. Right.
right,
He fits
right.
that to a T. And so,
And if you want to even go further, Cuomo wasn't part of the IDC, but some people kind of lump him in with that, right? Because he was governor at the time when this power sharing agreement happened. And they were like, yeah,
Mhm.
these Senate Democrats are joining with Republicans and they're passing Cuomo's law
Right.
or whatever. Like, they kind of put Cuomo in with that.
Okay. That makes sense. I can see a little bit more why people might feel a little some way. But um, I guess it's just maybe people were just hoping also that she
Yeah.
would go a
Yeah.
different direction.
Listen, our local state senator endorsed us, right, in the past
Sure.
primary, and there were people upset with him for that. They thought
Absolutely.
he should go with the most left-leaning, socialist candidate, whatever. And again, same kind of situation. It's like an unrealistic expectation you're putting on them. If he's not identifying as a DSA member, why does he have to endorse the socialist? But some people just,
Sure.
they just thought, oh, I thought you were progressive. How come you didn't go all the way over here? It's like, they're free to make their own choices. It's not like you have to endorse someone that you want them to.
Right. A new update just rolled in on the automatic update here. Mamdani is still in the lead at 43.8% with Cuomo at 35.8%, and this is 74%. Oh no, wait, it just updated again. Mamdani at 43.9, Cuomo at 35.6, and this
Wow.
is 76% of the scanners reporting in.
Okay.
So
The
yeah.
funnel is gaining ground, but it looks like not as fast as you might want to be.
Um, it looks like the margin is still about the same though. Like they were separated by about 50,000 votes earlier, and
What
even with the
about
increased numbers, there's still Mamdani is actually about in between 60 to 70,000 60 to 70,000 ahead.
what about percentage wise? Because it looks like it's under 10% now between them.
The percentage was still about the same, so it's
Wasn't
about 9% difference now, or
it?
eight. I'd say about eight.
8% different. Was it that small before? I thought it was a little bit bigger for Mandani.
I think it was about that. Maybe there's a smaller difference.
Yeah.
But let me see here. The AP estimates on PBS is showing that there's an 8% difference also.
Right.
So yeah, I mean it's still kind of anybody's game between the two, but Mamdani is holding strong.
Right. Right. And they have to ask the absentee votes, do they favor more Cuomo or Mamdani? The one thing I'll note is that poll that had Mamdani winning with the ranked choice voting had him losing, believe it or not, the first round. So if he's winning the first round, that's really good news for him because
Right.
he was expected to win. If he won at all, he was expected to win by losing the first round, but catching up when Brad Lander's voters started going to him and that kind of thing. So, if he's coming out the gate still winning after the first round is done, that's really good news for him.
And Brad Lander's got he's got 11% of the vote according to this so far. So um his uh his voters are yeah, will play in a big factor.
Right, right, and that's
For
the thing.
somebody.
Right, and that's the thing. And he went hard, like we talked about, hard saying don't rank Cuomo these past few weeks, right? And
Right.
so, if his voters listen to him, if they put, for example, Mamdani anywhere on their ballot under Brad, but left off Cuomo, then all of his votes would go to Mamdani.
Right. And then there's really no one that close afterwards. Like after Lander at 11.5%, you've got the nearest one is Adrian Adams at 4.1.
Right.
And everyone else is around or less than 1%.
Yeah. So you see, right? Just thinking through this in your head, once those lesser candidates, right, people who have under 1%, once they're
Yeah.
eliminated, it's really not going to change these numbers a lot, right? It's just going to
Right,
just take
right.
them out of the running, but it's not going to do much to the numbers.
Yeah, Landers votes will be able to could make a
Yeah,
difference.
right.
And then if it's really close, some of the votes from Adrian Adams may,
Right.
depending on how close it is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So,
Well, like we said, to be continued.
all right.
Where can people find us, Jay? I think we gave a bottom line earlier. We kind of went
You
ahead.
did give a bottom liner, so yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube Nuance Show, Facebook, Instagram as well, and then everywhere podcasts are available, of course. So you
Yeah.
got to say the thing. You got to say the
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Oh, I'll say the thing. All right. Well, we thank everyone for tuning in. As always, hope you were able to stay cool in this heat wave. And we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time.